All right, let's jump into another deep dive. Today, we're going way back in time, like 5th century BC. We're going to be looking at the book of Nehemiah.
Okay.
And I think, it's a story of resilience. It's a story of rebuilding. It's a story of leadership, both literally and figuratively.
Yeah.
We're going to be unpacking Nehemiah's efforts to rebuild the wall of Jerusalem. And of course, this takes place after the Babylonian exile. I have a feeling there's going to be a lot that we can glean from this story.
For sure. This is a fascinating period. I mean, you've got a community, they're returning to their homeland after decades of exile.
Yeah.
And, they're finding their city in ruins. Their identity's been shaken.
Yeah, it's a pretty bleak picture, right?
Yeah.
It's like crumbling walls and burned gates. It's almost like a physical manifestation of just shattered hopes,
Yeah, exactly. And into this scene steps Nehemiah. He's the cupbearer to the Persian king, Artaxerxes I. And what's interesting is that he's not a military leader.
Right.
He's not a priest.
Right.
He's a court official.
Right.
But yet he feels this really deep, this personal anguish over the state of Jerusalem.
Yeah, the text actually says that he weeps and mourns.
Yeah.
And fasts for days when he hears the news.
Yeah.
And, prays to God for beaten. So it's very clear that this isn't just like some political mission for him.
Right.
This is like deeply personal.
And his prayer is not just about, rebuilding the physical structures.
Oh, wait.
He's actually confessing the sins of his people.
Right.
He's acknowledging their role in the destruction of Jerusalem. And it's a powerful reminder that, sometimes rebuilding starts with inward reflection.
Yeah.
With taking responsibility for the past.
That's a great point. So how does a heartbroken cupbearer convince a king to let him go rebuild a city like hundreds of miles away?
Well, the king notices Nehemiah's sadness, and it's kind of a risky moment.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, imagine you're trying to hide your inner turmoil while you're serving wine to like a powerful ruler.
Yeah, I'd be like spilling goblets everywhere.
Totally. So Nehemiah, he prays silently for courage, and then he kind of just takes this leap of faith.
Okay.
He asks the king for permission to go back to Jerusalem and rebuild the walls.
And the king agrees.
The king agrees.
Wow.
I know, it's amazing.
What do you think motivated Artaxerxes to support this? Do you think it was purely compassion? Or was there some kind of strategic element at play, maybe?
It's probably a bit of both.
Okay.
So rebuilding Jerusalem could have served the Persian Empire's interest by, creating the stable outpost in the region.
Right.
It could have been a really shrewd political move, like fostering goodwill with this large population within the empire.
Right.
And maybe the king was, genuinely moved by Nehemiah's sincerity in his devotion.
Cool.
So the text tells us that Artaxerxes, he grants him safe passage. He gives him letters to governors for support, and even timber from the royal forests.
Wow. That's like the ultimate package deal.
Yeah.
So Nehemiah shows up in Jerusalem, royal decree in hand, ready to go. You'd think everyone would be thrilled,
Well,
right?
maybe I would think that.
Like, yay, let's rebuild.
But not everyone was super excited about the idea of a resurgent Jerusalem.
Okay.
And this is where we meet some pretty interesting characters who become Nehemiah's main antagonists.
It's never a good story without a little conflict, right?
Exactly.
So who are these troublemakers? Give us the rundown.
Okay, so we have Sanballat the Hornite,
Okay.
Tobiah the Ammonite,
Okay.
and Geshem the Arab.
Okay.
And they represent these, different regional powers.
Right.
And they're very suspicious of Nehemiah's intentions.
Makes you wonder, what were their motivations? Were they just threatened by this potential, shift in power dynamics?
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Almost certainly. I mean, they had likely benefited from Jerusalem being in this weakened state, right?
Right.
So a fortified city meant, a challenge to their influence.
Yeah.
So the text describes them mocking the Jews and ridiculing them, predicting their failure. And they even try to, plant these seeds of doubt about the Jews' loyalty to the Persian king.
Wow.
It's a classic example of just trying to undermine a project before it even gets off the ground.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
So how does Nehemiah respond to all this negativity and all this opposition? Does he get into a shouting match?
No.
Challenge them to a chariot race? What does he do?
No, he's much more strategic than that.
Okay.
He understands that, knowledge is power.
Right.
So he secretly inspects the ruined walls at night.
Okay.
He's assessing the damage. He's figuring out how big of a task this is going to be.
Right.
He doesn't get into these public arguments. He's gathering information.
Very smart. It's I'm not going to waste time on your drama. I'm going to focus on what needs to get done.
Exactly. And then he does something really brilliant.
Okay.
He gathers the Jewish leaders and the people, and he reveals his plan, and he tells them about the king's support. And he appeals to their, their shared history, their faith. He reminds them of God's promises, and he essentially turns this construction project into a spiritual mission.
He's reframing the narrative, right?
Exactly.
It's like he's saying, we're not defeated, we're going to rise from the ashes.
Yeah.
And this is our chance to showcase, our strength and our faith.
Yeah.
And it works, right?
It does. Inspired by Nehemiah's leadership and their shared purpose, the people agree to rebuild. So they're not just laying bricks, they're reclaiming their identity. They're reclaiming their heritage.
It's a powerful image. I can already feel the momentum building. But I have a feeling those antagonists aren't going to just disappear, are they?
Oh, no.
I feel like things are about to get a lot more complicated.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
You can bet on that.
Right.
Rebuilding a wall's hard enough. But, rebuilding a city and a community and a way of life, that takes a lot of courage.
Right.
And resilience. And Nehemiah's journey is far from over.
Okay, I'm ready to hear more. Let's dive into that next chapter of this story.
Okay, so we've got the walls going up, the people are energized. It feels like, like a fresh start for Jerusalem.
Yeah.
But those adversaries, that we were talking about, Sanballat and Tobiah and Geshem,
right.
They're not going to take this lying down, are they?
No, not a chance.
What do? Do they start, throwing rotten fruit over the wall?
Well, their opposition actually escalates as the wall progresses.
Okay.
And they realize that mocking words, they're not actually stopping the work.
Right.
So they shift tactics.
Okay.
And they resort to actual threats of violence.
Wow.
Yeah. So the sources describe them conspiring to attack Jerusalem.
Okay.
To try to disrupt the construction.
Right.
And, so chaos among the workers.
Yeah, that's a very stressful work environment. I can't imagine trying to lay bricks with a sword strapped to my side. How did Nehemiah keep everyone from just panicking and abandoning the project? Well, this where Nehemiah's leadership really shines.
Okay.
He shows this remarkable understanding of logistics and human psychology.
Okay.
So he organizes the people into family units.
Okay.
And each family is responsible for defending a section of the wall.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, so that way they're not only protecting the city,
right.
They're also protecting, their own loved ones.
Yeah, it creates a sense of personal responsibility.
Exactly.
It's not just about these abstract ideals anymore.
Yeah.
It's I'm protecting my family, my home.
Exactly. And he also establishes the system of communication using trumpets.
Oh, okay.
So everyone stays informed and coordinated.
So they can sound the alarm if they need to.
Exactly. Very smart. And he reminds them that they have to be vigilant.
Right.
But their ultimate trust should be in God.
He's not just a military strategist. He's a spiritual leader, too.
Exactly.
He's reminding them that this rebuilding is about more than just, brick and mortar.
For sure.
Right.
That's a key insight.
Yeah. So just when they're overcoming, all these external threats, we start to see Nehemiah encounter a problem brewing, within the community itself.
Right.
We see this economic hardship, kind of this social injustice start to kind of bubble up to the surface. What happens? Do they run out of building supplies?
No. This is more about, unfortunately, human nature.
Okay.
A lot of these people are returning from exile.
Right.
They're starting over with very little.
Right.
And some people are taking advantage of this vulnerable situation.
Okay.
We see instances of usury.
Okay.
Where wealthy individuals are lending money at really exorbitant interest rates.
Wow.
They're even forcing, their fellow Jews into debt bondage.
That's awful. So while they're rebuilding the city, they're also dealing with these internal divisions and this exploitation. It seems like that seems like a recipe for disaster.
Well, it's a reminder that even with a shared goal,
right,
human communities are complex.
Right.
And Nehemiah, he recognizes that this internal strife could really unravel everything they've accomplished.
Okay. So how does he handle this? Does he set up some kind of ancient financial regulation committee?
He takes a very direct approach.
Okay.
He confronts those who are practicing usury.
Okay.
The text describes him as filled with this righteous anger,
okay.
Demanding they stop exploiting their own people.
I bet they weren't expecting that, especially coming from the governor.
Right. But Nehemiah doesn't just stop at words.
Okay.
He backs up his condemnation with personal sacrifice.
Okay.
He refuses the governor's customary financial support.
Wow.
And he also very generously provides for those in need.
So he's leading by example.
Exactly.
He's putting his money where his mouth is.
Exactly. But you know those external enemies, they're still lurking.
Right. They're not going anywhere.
So Sanballat, Tobiah, Geshem, they haven't given up.
Right.
And as the wall nears completion, they kind of try a new tactic.
Oh.
They shift from threats to deception,
Okay.
and they pretend to want to negotiate, and they invite Nehemiah to a meeting.
Sounds like a trap.
It sounds like a classic, let's talk peace while we plan to ambush you tactic.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So Nehemiah sees right through it.
Okay.
He refuses the invitation. He's like, look, I'm too busy building. I don't have time for your games.
I love his no-nonsense attitude.
Right.
It's like, nope, I've got things to do.
He's got his priorities straight.
Yes, he does.
But they get even sneakier. They hire this prophet named Shemaiah.
Oh, a false prophet.
Yeah, to try to sabotage the project from within.
That's low.
It is.
So what's the plan? What were they trying to do?
Well, Shemaiah, he tries to convince Nehemiah to hide in the temple.
Okay.
And he says it's for his safety.
Was there like a trap in there or something? What was going on?
So this would have been a really bad move.
Okay.
Because for the governor to enter like the inner sanctum of the temple would be a serious violation.
Okay, so it's like a religious thing.
It's a religious law.
Okay.
And it would have made him look like a coward, which would undermine his authority.
So he's breaking the law and he's losing the respect of the people.
Exactly.
No-win
A
situation.
total no-win situation. But Nehemiah sees their scheme.
Okay.
He recognizes that fear is a really powerful weapon that they're
Yeah.
trying to use against him.
Yeah.
And so he refuses to be manipulated, and he continues his work,
Okay.
further inspiring the people with his courage and his resolve.
So despite all these challenges,
Right.
both internal and external,
Right.
they keep building.
They do.
It's like a testament to the human spirit,
It is.
our ability to overcome adversity. Did they actually finish the wall?
They did. Against all odds, they finished the wall in 52 days.
Wow, that's incredible. That's less than 2 months to rebuild a wall that had been in ruins for, like, over a century.
I know. It's amazing.
Wow. I can't even imagine, like, that sense of accomplishment. Did it have, like, the desired effect
Oh, yeah.
on all these, like, adversaries? Like,
Oh, yeah.
did it change their minds?
So the sources, they tell us that the surrounding nations, the ones who had, mocked and threatened the Jews, they were shocked.
Okay.
They recognized that something really extraordinary had happened, that there was a power at work here, that went beyond just human effort.
It's like this giant mission accomplished banner,
Yeah.
like hanging over Jerusalem, right?
Totally.
Like, we're back and we're stronger than ever.
Exactly.
Right.
But as we'll see, Nehemiah's vision goes beyond just building walls. He's going to embark on an even more challenging task.
Okay.
Rebuilding like the heart and soul of the city,
Oh, wow.
addressing like the spiritual and social fabric of the community.
Oh, that's fascinating. I can't wait to hear about that.
Yeah.
So it's clear that for Nehemiah, this whole rebuilding project,
Yeah,
it was never just about bricks and mortar.
right.
It was about restoring their identity, their faith, their sense of purpose.
You got it. You hit the nail on the head. And in the next part of our deep dive, we'll explore how Nehemiah tackles these deeper, more complex challenges.
Okay, I'm ready. All right, so we left off with the wall complete,
Right.
which is a remarkable achievement in itself.
Yeah.
But I have a feeling for Nehemiah, this is just script one
Right.
in a much, much larger vision.
Totally.
So what happens after those final stones are laid?
Well, the story, it doesn't end with just a ribbon-cutting ceremony. Nehemiah, his concern wasn't just a strong wall. It was a thriving city inside those walls. So he turns his attention to repopulating Jerusalem because, it had been largely deserted during the exile.
Yeah, it makes sense. What good's a fortress if there's no community to fill it? How did he go about bringing people back? Did he offer, like, tax breaks and free bread?
Well, the sources describe this fascinating process involving the casting of lots. And it seems that Nehemiah wanted to make sure that there was a diverse representation of families and clans within the city, not just, the wealthy and the influential.
So it's about creating this, like, balanced and sustainable community,
Yeah.
not just filling empty houses, right?
Exactly. It's like social engineering, but in a positive sense.
Right. Very interesting.
And alongside this resettlement, we see that Nehemiah very carefully documents genealogies,
Okay.
tracing these lineages back to those who had returned from the exile.
Why was that so important? Was it just for, like, historical record keeping?
Well, it's about reinforcing a sense of shared history. reminding people of their connection to those who had come before them. It's about rebuilding not just a city, but also a collective memory,
Okay.
a sense of belonging.
So he's like weaving together the past, the present, and the future of Jerusalem.
Yeah.
It's this powerful statement of like continuity
Okay.
and resilience.
And speaking of connecting to the past, this is where Ezra the scribe
Oh, right.
enters the scene.
He was instrumental in preserving and teaching the law of Moses
Indeed.
during the exile,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
He's like the ultimate guardian of their sacred texts,
Yeah.
their traditions.
He is.
Right.
Yeah.
So what role does he play in this, this whole rebuilding process?
Well, with the city walls restored and you've got all these people gathered,
Right.
Ezra takes center stage and he publicly reads the law of Moses to the entire community.
Wow. I can only imagine what that moment must have been like for a lot of these folks.
Mhm.
Like maybe the first time they're truly hearing these words, understand like their laws, their covenant with God.
And the text describes people weeping, confessing their sins, and renewing their commitment to God's commandments.
It's this like powerful scene of collective repentance
Right.
and a spiritual reawakening.
Exactly. It's a reminder that rebuilding isn't just about physical structures.
Right.
It's about restoring the relationship with God,
Right.
rediscovering their identity as a people.
Absolutely, yeah.
And this spiritual renewal, it leads to celebration.
Boy.
So the people, they observe the Feast of Booths,
Okay.
Sukkot, and they're dwelling in these temporary shelters as a reminder of their ancestors' journey through the wilderness.
It's a beautiful image. Like after all this hardship, they're literally dwelling in their history.
Yeah.
And they're celebrating their survival and their renewed covenant with God.
It's a powerful symbol of gratitude and humility.
Absolutely.
And then this theme of reflection and renewal, it gets even deeper as the people gather for this solemn fast.
Oh,
They
wow.
confess their sins
Okay.
and the sins of their ancestors.
So they're acknowledging those past mistakes.
Yeah.
But they're also like looking forward to the future.
Yeah,
Right.
totally. And they make this covenant with God where they pledge to uphold his laws. Things like, Sabbath observance, supporting the temple, and addressing the issue of intermarriage with foreigners.
That last one sounds particularly complex.
It is.
Why was that? Why was intermarriage such a sensitive issue? Was it just about like cultural purity or something?
It's important to remember the historical context. The Jewish community at that time was this small, fragile entity
Right.
surrounded by powerful empires and
Right.
all these different cultures.
Right.
So intermarriage, it was seen as a threat
Okay.
to their religious and cultural identity, like a potential path to assimilation
Right.
and the loss of their unique covenant with God.
Right. So it was about preserving their heritage,
Yeah.
making sure that they survived as a distinct people.
Exactly.
Right.
And, it's a complex issue. It's one that has, echoes throughout history. But the key takeaway here is that Nehemiah is trying to establish a community that's grounded in shared values and traditions, a community that can withstand the pressures of the world around them.
Okay, so Nehemiah has rebuilt the walls, repopulated the city, revived their spirits, renewed their covenant with God. Is that the happy ending? Does he finally get to rest and enjoy like the fruits of his labor?
Well, you would think so, wouldn't you? But the story, it doesn't quite end there. So Nehemiah, he leaves Jerusalem. He's got to go back to his duties at the Persian court.
Right.
But when he comes back,
Okay.
he finds out that things haven't exactly gone according to plan.
Oh no. Did someone like graffiti the newly built wall?
It's a little more serious than that.
Okay.
He finds that some people have kind of slipped back into old habits.
Oh no.
They're neglecting the Sabbath.
Okay.
They're exploiting the temple for personal gain. And some have even resumed intermarrying with foreigners.
All that hard work.
I'm...
All that spiritual renewal. It's like it didn't stick.
I know. It must have been incredibly frustrating for Nehemiah.
Oh yeah.
But true to form,
Yeah.
he doesn't just give up.
Okay.
He confronts these issues head on.
Okay.
He addresses the abuses.
Okay.
He expels those who are, profaning the temple.
Okay.
And he reinforces the importance of upholding their covenant.
It's like this constant battle against complacency,
Yeah.
against backsliding into old ways.
It is. And it's a reminder that building something lasting, whether it's a city or a community, it takes ongoing effort, and vigilance.
That's a powerful insight, yeah.
The story of Nehemiah, it reminds us that true leadership isn't just a one-time event. It's this ongoing process of guiding
Right,
and correcting
right.
and inspiring.
It's been incredible exploring the book of Nehemiah. We've seen the power of faith, perseverance, and leadership in overcoming seemingly impossible obstacles.
I've really enjoyed unpacking the story with you.
Me too.
It's amazing how much wisdom and inspiration you can
Sure.
find in these ancient texts.
For sure. And I bet our listeners feeling pretty inspired too. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's one final thought, something to ponder? What can we leave them with?
Here's something to consider. Nehemiah, he focused on rebuilding physical walls and a spiritual community. But what walls need rebuilding in your own life? Are there personal boundaries that need strengthening? Relationships that need mending? Values that need reaffirming? Perhaps there's a project or a community that needs your unique skills and dedication to flourish. The story of Nehemiah reminds us that we all have the potential to be rebuilders, to bring restoration and renewal to our own little corner of the world.
That's a fantastic question. And on that note, we'll leave you to ponder that. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the book of Nehemiah. Until next time, keep building.